In July of 1976, Arab, Palestinian, and German terrorists took over an Air France airliner that was in Paris, headed to Tel Aviv. They hijacked it and had already made arrangements with Idi Amin in Uganda to take the plane there. That's how Africa got dragged into this hostage thing, this Jew-hating thing, where Africa was not. If you notice, once again, Arab, Palestinian terrorists and German terrorists, they're the ones who hijacked the plane. Africa was no one involved until Idi Amin, who had already turned anti-Zionist, anti-Jew, pro-Hitler, the whole thing. He goes, I'll help you. We're already a dictator, but one who now places Africa, the very region that was prophesied that would come and make a highway to Zion, he's now perverting the very thing that the word of God says about the region. They cast their lot with Israel's enemies. Zionism in the Black church. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from chapters 5 and 6. In 2016, Benjamin Netanyahu became the first Israeli prime minister to visit Africa in almost 30 years. He traveled to East Africa, stopping in Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, and Ethiopia. 2016 was also the 40th anniversary of the raid on Entebbe, when 100 Israeli commandos rescued nearly all of the 100 Israeli hostages taken to Uganda by German and Palestinian terrorists. I have several Ugandan friends who told me that when their nation participated in the attack on the Jewish people, God cursed them according to Genesis 12:3. These are Ugandans who said this to me. They explained the wars and calamities that befell Uganda after Entebbe was God's judgment on the nation. There were several events led by Ugandan pastors and leaders in which the people repented for their actions against Israel. During his 2016 East African tour, Prime Minister Netanyahu's first stop was Uganda. There at Entebbe Airport, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni led a moving ceremony affirming the two nations' close bond. Today, Uganda is a relatively peaceful and prosperous nation. You have some Islamist terrorism issues happening there, that is happening, but all in all, with one of Africa's fastest growing economies. Israeli commandos led by Yonatan Netanyahu, the brother of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, successfully rescued the hostages in Operation Thunderbolt, also known as the raid on Entebbe. Yonatan Netanyahu was the only commando killed in the rescue effort. The only Israeli hostage not rescued was 74-year-old Dora Bloch, who fell sick and had been taken to a hospital. Amin reportedly had her shot and killed. The raid on Entebbe would not have been possible had Israel not refueled its planes carrying the commandos to East Africa. Among other things, in 1976, Kenyan President Jomo Kenyatta allowed the Israeli Mossad to gather intelligence for the mission, then refuel in Kenya. Kenya's president today, which was 1970, this was 2021 when I wrote this, because he's no longer the president, but Uhuru Kenyatta is the son of Jomo Kenyatta. So that was the son at the 40th anniversary. After leaving Uganda, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu flew to Kenya and continued the commemoration of Operation Thunderbolt, thanking Kenya once again for helping in 1976. The ceremonies in Uganda and Kenya were deeply personal and a clear sign of a significant shift in the long Africa-Israel story.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a deeply moving day for me. Exactly 40 years ago, Israeli soldiers carried out the historic mission at Entebbe, and now I have the privilege to return here as Prime Minister of Israel with some of those same brave soldiers and some of those brave pilots who flew them here. 40 years ago, they landed in the dead of night in a country led by a brutal dictator who gave refuge to terrorists. Today, we landed in broad daylight in a friendly country led by a president who fights terrorists. We have gathered here to mark an event that inspired the world and lifted the spirits of my people. At Entebbe, international terrorism suffered a stinging defeat. The rescue mission proved that good can prevail over evil, that hope can triumph over evil, over fear. Today, savage terror is once again sweeping the world. We must recognize that the battle against it is indivisible. When terrorism succeeds in one place, it spreads to other places. And when terrorism is defeated anywhere, it is weakened everywhere. This is why Entebbe was more than an Israeli victory. It was a victory for all humanity in the fight against those who threaten our common civilization. The raid on Entebbe was a watershed moment in the life of my people. For centuries, Mr. President, we were stateless and powerless to defend ourselves. No one came to our rescue. We were murdered by the millions. The rise of Israel changed all that. Time and again, Israel has successfully defended itself against enemies committed to our destruction. But it was perhaps at Entebbe where this fundamental transformation was most dramatically seen by the world. That night 40 years ago also changed the course of my own life. My beloved brother Yoni, who led the force that stormed the old terminal, overcame the terrorists and freed the hostages, was the only soldier who was killed. I learned from my brother and from others that two things are needed above all to defeat terrorism: clarity and courage. Clarity to distinguish good from evil, and courage to confront evil. Thank you. Thank you all.
Netanyahu, then after that ceremony and after a couple of days in Uganda meeting with other East African leaders, flies then to Kenya and has a similar ceremony led by himself and President Uhuru Kenyatta, the son of the President Jomo Kenyatta, who actually helped Israel rescue its hostages out of Uganda. This was a biblical clash because of the prophetic about what that region in Africa was to represent. It is to be princes coming out of Egypt, Ethiopia stretching out her hands to God, the gift of God being brought to Zion, to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This has much to do with why to this day, particularly African Christians and obviously African Jews, by and large, love Israel.
Truth to Power Live with Dumisani Washington.